God has given us this incredible gift of being created in His image. And the idea of being created in His image, that word image actually means shadow. It is that the idea that everywhere He moves, we move with Him because we're created in His image. Part of being created in His image is having the ability to create, to have creativity, to consider and think about things, to have the opportunity to make something not out of nothing, but to take different things, different ideas, different products, and kind of smash them together and see what we come up with. Many times in art, when we're creating, we have an idea or we have something that we're looking at and we're working from, like a still life, which would be, a vase of flowers or some fruit or even a room. But sometimes, and many times, you don't create from something you're looking at. You create from something that you sense, something that you see in your mind, or you just start playing around to see what happens. And that's part of the fun, because you have this completely blank canvas or a slate or journal page, and you don't know where it's going to go, but you know you've got to put something down. You start from a place with an idea, or you're looking at something, but many times it's just that you have an idea and you start. And it's amazing to see what happens after you start, in the middle, and you get to the end. And something that is wonderful to do in art is when you're making something, you're creating something, when you're complete, you feel like you've gotten as far as you need to go and you've expressed the thought or the idea, you give it a name. And that name, most of the time, is representative of either what you were feeling or what the piece looks like. And it's funny because God would go back and rename His masterpiece, because the original name that the person was given did not suit the future God had planned for them. Wow. Let's just take a second and look at that, because God knows the future. He knows who you are, and He knows what His plans are for you. And in Scripture, the name was the embodiment of the person, and the person would live up to that name, whether it was intentional or not. And God would step in and go, oh no, we're going a different direction. You need a new name. And that's exactly what happened with Abram. God changed his name from Abram to Abraham, because God told him, you're going to be a dad. You're going to be the father of many nations, which was quite unrealistic to our way of thinking, because Abraham was almost 100 and his wife was, well, let's say she was in and past and not having children because of menopause and all these good things. So yeah, it was looking like, okay, whatever. And God said, no, actually you're going to have a child and you're going to be the father of many nations. So we need to change your name to Abraham. And doing so changed the outlook and the perspective. And that's one of the things that we're going to chat about today, is your perspective based on what you're naming things. Rarely do you go back and change the name of the piece of art that you've created. Now, this is an interesting concept, because in Scripture it says, we are God's masterpiece. We are His workmanship. We are His masterpiece. And we get names. Now, we get names from our parents. In Scripture, a lot of times, many times, the person that was having the child or the family that was having the child, Romans 4:17 is right smack in the middle of a thought, a sentence, a thing, but I'm going to start there anyway. It says, as it is written, I have made you the father of many nations. He is our Father in God's sight, in whom Abraham believed, the God who gives life to the dead and calls things into existence that do not exist. That's the part that just gets me every time. God calls things into existence that do not exist. And the way he calls them is literally calls them. He doesn't go out and, pick up a shovel and a hammer and start building things. He just says, okay, this is going to happen. And it does. Now, clearly it's because he can see the future because he creates the future. But what if our perspective is more along the lines of calling into existence what doesn't exist because we know God sees the future, and we can say, okay, Lord, what is the future that you're seeing that I'm missing? I need your perspective. And what are you going to call into existence that doesn't exist? Okay, before we go all nutty here, I'm not saying to call into existence in the manner of, I have $1 million in the bank when you actually have $67.35. That's not what I'm saying. That is not this principle. The idea is what you are in right now and where you are and what you're walking in is exactly where you are, but that doesn't mean that's where you're going to stay. That doesn't mean that's the plan God has for you. And when we change our perspective to what's God's plan, what is he doing, and how do I partner with him, we begin to see things that he has called into existence that didn't exist because we weren't looking at it from his perspective. But Abraham believed it. And scripture said it was credited to his faith because he believed. God calls things into existence that don't exist. And that is unbelievable and believable to me at the same time. It's just like the art. You have a journal page, you have a canvas, and you start creating on it, and something comes out of it. Now, whether you love it or not really has no bearing on it because it's created out of whatever you have. This is how God works. He already knows who you are and what he has for you, and this amazing life that you're going to have as you listen to him and believe him. God changed Abraham's name based on his future, not his present and not his past. So if we change that around, and instead of looking at it as a person, we take this perspective of where am I right now, what's going on in my life with my job, my relationships, my income, and what are you saying about it? Are you saying about it as it is right now, or are you saying as it is going to be in the future? Because God has promised us life abundant. And I don't mean like, oh, you're going to make $10 kajillion. I'm not saying that. I'm saying life abundant as in relationship with him, because everything comes out of relationship with him, which is another thing that he has created with us and for us. So when we take this perspective of I can be really negative and I can say right now, which literally it's 30 something degrees outside and it feels more like it's 22, and I can just grumble and grump about it, or I can go, okay, but I've got a warm house. This is cool. I can do art. I can read a book. I can cook. I've got all these options, and I've got a place that's warm. Or I can complain because it's cold and I don't want to go outside because it's cold and it's gray and it's overcast. So it's your perspective. It's my perspective, and it's calling things not as they are right this minute from our perspective, but as they are from God's perspective. Because we know, even with this cold weather, this is part of creation. We have to have the cold weather because it's how plants, seeds, how all of these things cycle through in different parts of the world. If some of these seeds don't have this, some of these plants or seeds don't have this cold weather, then they do not bloom in the spring. So it's this step back, pull back perspective. Step back, pull back from what you're creating on the canvas or what you're drawing or painting or however you want to say it, and look at it from the bigger picture, from God's perspective, not our perspective. Let's go in a different direction for just a minute here. Zig Ziglar said, if you can dream it, then you can achieve it. Well, that's all about believing you can do something, dreaming something and believing you can do it. How much greater is it to have the dream that God gave you, knowing He can do it, that it's not up to you, that it's up to Him, and He can do it. Because He's given you the dream, or in the Old Testament, it says He gives you the desires of your heart. Well, He put the desires in your heart in order for you to have them. So what if, God calls all things into existence? Well, what if that is us choosing to believe what we see right here in front of us right now and looking at it in a negative way? Or changing that thinking to, what is God saying? What is God doing? Is God changing my name? Is God really changing my name? Because my name right now, my name on this situation, my name on whatever's going on, does not match the future that He has for me. I'm ready for a name change. I think I'm ready to see things from the perspective of God, and the idea, that what I call things is literally what they are, because it's how I see it. And it's only that way because it's how I see it. So if I change my perspective, maybe if I look at myself as hard-headed, but I change it to tenacious, that would be better. And maybe instead of, lazy, we change this idea to thorough in thinking. I think God calls things into existence by naming them. So maybe I need to think about changing the names of some things, changing perspective to His, and maybe playing the name game.